this week's Whiteboard Leadership Moment, I want to talk to you about the evangelistic activities of your church or the evangelistic activities of your life. In the past, we've talked about these ideas of cultivating relationships, planting the seed of Christ, and reaping a response, and how those three things are very, very different, but all essential in your evangelistic culture, in your church, and in your life. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about the sense of threat and the sense of relationship with those people you're talking to about the gospel of Jesus. And so what I have here is this tension between the two, where there's a low sense of threat in certain scenarios, and there's a high sense of threat in other scenarios. They're not your peers, people you'll see over and over again, or they are your peers. And how we handle each one and how we describe each one of these events in the life of the church or in your individual life. If something is low threat and non-peer, then you're in the cultivating stage of evangelism. You're cultivating relationships, you're cultivating a reputation for your church. And so these would be things like service projects in the community, which are very, very important, or serving the poor, perhaps a community improvement or a community development event where you're helping others, you're joining others outside the church, and you're just being a part of the community. Maybe it's just other things where you're at your workplace and your workplace has those same kind of things. But regardless, it's a low threat, non-peer event, and it's you're cultivating reputation, you're cultivating relationships in those kind of things. If we move over to this lower level of threat, but it's peer relationships, it means you're doing stuff in your neighborhood, you're doing stuff in your workplace, you may be giving your own testimony, you're sharing the seeds, you're planting the seeds of Christ by sharing how your church has affected you. Maybe it's an evangelistic event that you're not speaking at, you're not a part of, but you're just inviting people too. So you're investing in people, you're inviting them, but this is still just the planting phase. On this corner, we have those things that are a higher sense of threat, but they're non-peer. This would be things like teaching a Sunday school class for children. You're an adult, they're not your peers. You may love them, some of you may even think like them, but they're not your peers. And so the sense of threat is high because you're sharing the gospel, so you're wanting to reap a response, and so they're sharing the gospel there, and you're planting seeds. But in the end, you're not going to go home and wonder, does this kid love me or not? Or it doesn't happen that way. Or maybe you're a youth counselor, and same kind of thing. They're not the same age, even though they're in strong proximity of you. Or perhaps it's a mission trip. And a mission trip, it's non-peer in the sense that you're going to go there, and you may be very bold in speaking to crowds of people about the gospel and calling them to a decision for Christ, but in the end, you're going to jump on a plane or jump on a bus, and you're going to go back to where you were. And it's a high threat because you're sharing your faith or going to a culture you don't understand, but it's still non-peer. See, here's the thing. A whole lot of people think that this mission kind of stuff is the most difficult thing. It's the hardest thing. It's the bravest thing you go to a foreign country where you have to eat food you don't understand and language you don't understand. And that's hugely mature. And yet the most mature place to be is when you're sharing your faith with your peers. You're sharing your faith with your neighbors, your coworkers, your relatives, your friends, your classmates, when you're moving that direction. Jesus in John chapter 4 was talking to his disciples. After the woman at the well said, "Come see the man who told me everything I ever did. Could he be the Christ?" And the disciples were so excited because all these people from the town came and they reaped a response. But the disciples and Jesus were going to move on to another town. They were strangers, and so they were really on this mission trip area over here. What Jesus said in verses 36 through 38 is, and listen, you reap the benefit of other people's labor. Other people did the hard work. Other people cultivated relationship and planted the seed of Christ, and you're the ones who reap the response. But we're going to go from here to someplace else. Listen, getting your people to focus on seeing their neighbors come to Christ, their relatives, their classmates, their co-workers. That's the most important thing a church can do when it comes to evangelistic activity. All these things are important, but this one is absolutely essential. We must share the gospel and call people to response in the church, but we also must help our people to actually call their neighbors, co-workers, relatives, friends, and classmates to response as well. That is the church on the move. This has been a Converge Whiteboard Leadership Moment. To learn more about Converge or to join us, check out converge.org.